Welcome back into another episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. This is the Big 2-0. We have made it to episode number 20 coming at you. And I think we've got a little bit more of a intriguing episode to break down and to discuss today. Episode 6 of the second season of Bad Batch was, I thought, pretty good compared to the past 2 weeks. But before we dive into that, of course, Joey, what's going on, dude? How are you, man?
Happy February.
Yeah, isn't
We are
that
in
wild?
February 1st. Happy 1 month away from the season 3 premiere of Mandalorian.
Yes, officially 1 month.
Yeah, so lots of fun stuff. But no, doing good. Mentioned we hadn't talked about in this a while. So, we before we started I was talking about how I've been doing my workouts, all a month, and as part of my resolutions that I kind of wanted to make sure I kept up on. So yeah, this I think it's a good time to check in to see how we are with our
The resolution
resolutions.
update.
Yeah.
Well, Joey, you're probably carrying for both of us in the realm of resolutions. We were talking about this briefly before we started recording, but maybe like 3 weeks ago, I pulled my hamstring, which was like the first time in my life where I was like, man, I'm not young anymore. You know what I mean? Uh, and so
It gets worse. It gets worse, let's let you know.
yeah, and so I haven't been able to really run the past 3 weeks, but so you're carrying for the both of us.
It's all right.
But yeah, maybe another resolution update coming at the beginning of March, when the premiere of Mando comes out, rather than just starting off with, "Oh my gosh, the episode was great." So this is how our resolutions are going, everyone.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, we're excited for Mando, which again is coming out officially in a month's time. And maybe before we get into the episode, we can also just briefly mention another piece of news we received over the past few days, that Jedi Survivor is now being delayed another 6 weeks. Originally supposed to come out on March 17th, is now going to be released on April 28th, which, if a game is going to be better, I can wait 6 more weeks if it's going to be for the health of the game in the long run. And us
Absolutely.
us being big gamers, and we're both probably definitely going to be playing the game.
Absolutely. And it gives me
I can
a
wait.
little bit more time to finish the first one. That I'm
True.
still on and still
True.
on. I'm a little past halfway there now. The story's getting really good, so I'm excited to see the rest of that. I believe there's also either a comic book or a book that's coming out,
Hmm.
with Cal Kestis as being one of the main characters.
Right.
Probably should. I don't know. It's Jedi something. You know how it's like Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor. There's another like Jedi. I probably should have looked this up. But yeah. So they are definitely leaning into Cal Kestis and his story.
Yeah, there seems to be kind of a growing demand from the Star Wars community that it's only a matter of time before we'll see him in some kind of live action. Whether that's an upcoming film or whether they'll throw him in, probably not Mando or Ahsoka, just because it's so much further in the future. Unless he's like, I don't know. How cool would it be if like Mando rolls around and there's just like this
Right.
elderly Cal Kestis? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be kind of cool. But
Yeah. Looks like it's called Jedi Battle Scars.
oh, interesting. Is it a novel or is it a comic book?
Um, Looks like it's a book. Yeah. Yeah. It's an actual novel. Yeah.
Hmm. And that comes out before the game or after?
I don't have a date here.
Well, I mean, either way, more Cal Kestis content, I think, is what the
Oh,
general.
March 7th.
Oh, okay. So it was going
Yeah.
to come out before the game either way. Now we'll
Hmm.
have time to kind of digest the content of the book before the game
Yeah.
comes out.
All right. We're gonna
Um,
do a book review now too. I feel like we're in grade school.
oh, honestly, this is something that maybe we can discuss as well. We could probably do like a once a month sort of thing where we kind of cover and review a specific Star Wars book. I know there's certain
Hmm.
ones that each of us have read and been interested in at certain points. So that's something also we can do.
Yeah, you can carry the Legends books that I know that you love.
I used to keep them all in here. I keep them in my living room on my bookshelf
Oh,
now
nice.
and there, but I got a decent collection. Definitely
Yeah,
not.
there was a sale every so often. The library by us has like just a crazy sale of like books that either people haven't checked out in forever or they just have overstock of. I picked up so many Star Wars books
Yeah.
for literally like I got a paper bag full, like a grocery bag full, for like $4. It was crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, at some point I got to speed run through some of those books, and because I do know that there's a lot of people really love the Legends stories.
Yes, definitely some solid content. I'm biased towards the Old Republic stuff, but
Oh yeah,
it's all
yeah.
great.
Are you, because I don't remember you picking any of them for your favorite Jedi or your most powerful Jedi, you know?
Definitely not. You know what's great is that if we the next time we do, which we plan to do at some point, we did a top 5 Jedi draft. Um, we're planning to do a top 5 Sith draft. The great thing is I can use Revan not only for the top 5 Jedi draft, but I can use him for the top 5 Sith draft.
As long as we get our 30-minute dissertation about who he is again, and
Yeah.
how the importance of him in the world.
Exactly, exactly. Well, until the time comes when I can talk about Revan again, we are going to continue discussing mainly the Bad Batch for the next couple weeks at least until Mandalorian drops. Concerning Bad Batch, I thought this episode 6, was probably my favorite since. Oh, I would actually say it was maybe one of my top 2 or 3 favorites of the season so far. Definitely in the top half, I guess. Um, of course, the big point of note in this episode is something that we saw in the trailer for Bad Batch season 2, a month and a half ago. This Jedi, who we now know is named Gungi or Gungi. I think it was Gungi, Gungi, is premiering in this episode. He was a part of this episode, and we obviously learn pretty early on in the episode that when Omega is trying to save him from these. Oh, I forget. There was some sort of like droid faction. Do you remember the names of those people?
Vanguard Axis.
Vanguard Axis. Oh yeah, I wrote that there. Okay. So she's trying to save him from the Vanguard Axis, and you immediately see him go like, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're throwing Jedi at me right now. I'm in. I'm in.
That's right.
It is funny though. Like and we've talked about this before on the podcast that when there seems to be Star Wars content that is like lacking a little bit, I feel like Star Wars has a habit of just like, throwing a little classic Star Wars nostalgia spice on it and being like, "Look, there's a lightsaber. There's Jedi." And you're like, "Yes, Jedi.
Yeah,
Yes."
right. Right. This is
uh,
familiar. I
right.
know that reference,
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
I definitely felt myself feeling that during this episode. There is a part of me that wanted, and I don't know. It was a little bit unclear. I got the impression he was going to be staying on Kashyyyk at the end of the episode, but I don't know if we'll get any more of him in the rest of the show or not. I think it'd be cool if we did, or whether he's readdressed in another show. I hope he wasn't just dropped in this episode, then we like never get to explore
Right.
any of his story again. So again, whether it's in Bad Batch or maybe season 3 or even in a different show or somewhere in the future, hopefully we get to explore his story a little bit more in depth. You know that what's that children's show that's coming out in
Oh.
like Jedi Adventures or something?
Yeah.
Something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I was thinking like maybe he'd be like the protagonist in that show.
Yeah. Right. He's the lead.
Yeah, cuz he's younger, I don't know. Um But yeah, and the other cool piece of this episode. Well, I guess first of all, I'll let you comment on what you think of Gunji and his involvement in the episode.
I mean, any of the Jedi that have survived Order 66
Hmm.
should have a lot of emphasis on them, at least on, if it's for an episode, if it's for a future project. We love learning about who actually escaped.
Yeah,
We got to figure out how he got out. There's a lot that could be said about Gunji right away, right? Just based off of the story that we know is there, but we just haven't seen it yet. Much like Grogu, much like Kanan when he was Caleb Doom. We know those stories are there. So, and when we found out it was it Reva? Was that her name in Obi-Wan?
Riva, I
Riva,
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So like her story, that she was one of the Jedi there as well. So I mean, just all of that gives you just more promise for the future for these stories. So for one, I thought it was super cool. Just like you said, once you see that green lightsaber light up, there's something it's in our DNA now. We know it feels like home. Like this is where I belong. And I think you are right when the storyline starts getting a little bit further and further away of what we know to have to be Star Wars. They'll throw in a lightsaber. They'll throw in a TIE fighter. They'll throw in Darth Vader. They'll mention the Emperor. So just to keep all of that together, like, oh, by the way, this is Star Wars. We're telling a great story, but this is Star Wars. Please remember.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I enjoyed seeing, and one thing that I noticed that kind of kept raising my eyebrow is I don't remember if Hunter ever really referred to Omega as a kid. But he kept saying it a little bit here, like, "Oh, they're just kids," and "Oh, where are the kids at?" And although that's true, like I don't know, it's something with that word makes it sound like, oh, we have to watch them. Obviously, like the more the
Mm.
parenting side of it. I guess that's kind of where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Is that he's taking more responsibility for the youngling, for Omega, of course, and making sure that they're okay through all of this.
Almost, I mean, almost in a way like it was backtracking on some of the progression of their relationship in a way, just because he had it felt like she was getting more and more responsibility. And then this whole episode, he was calling her like the kid, the kid, the kid.
Right, yeah, exactly. So it was I mean, maybe I'm just grasping at straws here, but I felt like he was saying that a lot more than he
Hmm.
had ever in the past. And it's just an interesting thing, maybe because there's more because I mean, there was that episode, was it last season when they were with Hera? I don't remember him yelling, like, "Hey kids, come here," like the grumpy old grandpa getting off my lawn, type of thing, like, Get over here." Um, but yeah, so I just thought that it was something that I noticed along the lines there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out because I guess I didn't necessarily notice it, but now that you're saying it, and I feel like part of that may just be because the episode was centered around Gunji and almost like Omega's compassion for him and wanting um to return him home and their companionship, that it was almost easy to kind of just group them as like, oh, the kids, the kids, the kids. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out. I did not notice that myself, but I guess kind of taking that point and and running with it on a theme that we've been talking about for I think at least the past two episodes of the podcast. Um, is that I feel like we're officially at a point where Bad Batch doesn't feel really like it's a story about Omega or a story about Hunter or even the Bad Batch. Really, it just kind of feels like a treasure hunting show.
Hmm.
Um, and I think whenever the first episode was that it felt like that, maybe it was episode. Well, technically, it was the very beginning, and we just didn't know
Hmm.
that that's how the rest of the season was going to be. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm almost resigned to that fact now. Instead of like resisting it and being like disappointed by it, I'm just like, okay, like this is what that show is gonna be, and I'm okay with that. The season, like season one, did not feel that way. It felt very much like this relationship driven story of the separation of the other four with Crosshair, and then the addition of Omega and how she fits into all this, and it really kind of felt like it was building towards something greater. Season two has not given me that feeling, and this episode, I don't think, while I liked it a lot, doesn't really. I guess it just finalizes that feeling for me, if that makes sense. That the show this season really is not about um, anything in terms of the greater picture, unless they just do a 180 moving into the second half of the season, which would be kind of an interesting choice to make all these like essentially treasure hunting episodes at the first half of the season and then fill the back half of the season with the important stuff. I mean, I guess, but I feel like you lose a lot of your viewership in the process of that. So, anyways, that's my long-winded tangent on kind of my overall thoughts that we've already talked about a lot the past couple weeks, but just that this episode kind of drove those thoughts home even more. But I'm at peace with it now. I guess it's a better way of saying that.
Yeah, I think we really got that message last episode when it was
Yes.
the was it riot racing?
Hmm.
Once that happened, that was pretty much telling us right away. This, although we're called the Bad Batch, this story is about just this group of people. There's no, we're gonna have some fun with it. We're gonna show what we can do in the world of Star Wars.
Right.
We can do these riot racings. We could, look, there's a Jedi, and there's so there. It doesn't seem like where we looked at like something like Andor,
Hmm.
or even something like The Mandalorian, where and maybe it is the whole, and I hate to put it this way, but maybe it's the whole like live action versus animated, where there is a little bit of um more fun that you could have. There's a lighter tone when you have animation, obviously, and it won't be necessarily all story driven. But like you said, season one was very good, and we ended up really looking forward to season two, expecting kind of the same quality, the same type of story driven plot lines that season one had. But like you said, yeah, it just does not seem like that's the way, and that's fine. I kind of wish that we didn't have season one now, because and if they started season one kind of like this, I'd be like, I know what to expect here. But here's the thing: this is the one thing I will say about this: the Crosshair episode. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, just that, and you and I easily, and I could probably speak for you, easily our favorite episode of the season so
Yes.
far, and that's why we could almost not resign ourselves to it, because there's always going to be like, wait, but you had this one in this season, so what are we supposed to do? So it's like bait and switch constantly, right?
Hmm.
Um but but overall, this was my favorite Bad Batch episode of the group, obviously.
Hmm.
With the addition of the Jedi, we got some Trandoshans in there.
Hmm.
Saw a couple more clone troopers. So where things felt like, again, you see those certain aliens. And can we talk about some of these creatures that they introduced? This
The spider looking
spider,
things,
the spider piranha crab claw looking thing,
which
and scare. For one, I hate spiders. Right. The episode of Mandalorian when they had like those huge spiders.
oh
They hit
yeah.
when the the episode. Well, the Harry Potter movie when they had the huge. Hated it so much. So when this is here, although animated, they messed with the animation. They really did a good job of making them look like creepy crawlies, and it was
Y-
just a little much for me. But yeah, and then we had those lion looking
yeah, the things that
creatures
the
that
that the Wookiees were riding.
yeah, with the ears that kind of went into the eye, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So
We got a
yeah,
lot of Kashyyyk uh lore
lore.
expansion in this
Mm-hmm.
episode. A lot about the trees and how like the trees are ultimately like almost like the source of life on this planet in a way. It felt very Avatar-esque to me. If
Mm-hmm.
anyone has ever seen Avatar, like whatever the mother tree or whatever that's called in on the planet Pandora.
I was looking for Chewie's grandpa, and the VR headset that he was using in the
You know what? Oh, yeah. By the way, if anyone
Holly
hasn't seen
special.
the Star Wars Holiday Special, that's what that was a reference to. But this would also fall during the time like this could have been a missed opportunity to just throw Chewbacca into the episode and just
I mean,
really blow
just
some
really lean
minds.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Although
because he's around.
yeah, I don't know cuz at this point I'm trying to think timeline wise where he would be. I don't think he would have met Han at this point. Cuz Solo takes
I
place.
think so.
Gosh, I'd have to go back and see like how many years before New Hope Solo takes place, but I don't think Chewbacca would have been with Han at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Hey, missed opportunity to just throw some fan service Chewbacca into this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, the Trandoshans was a cool touch to see them in the episode. Another, I think the only other note I had about Kashyyyk, was that did you notice the music that was playing when it was almost it was from the prequels, I think, and it had this like eerie tone to it, and it had some sort of familiarity to it,
Okay.
and it caught my ear, I guess. I wrote it down at least, and so I thought that was also worth noting that although I don't think it was the same exact song or not song,
Theme.
theme or background music, I think it was drawn or taken from um the assault on Kashyyyk
Oh, okay.
in Revenge of the Sith, isn't it? Revenge of the Sith, yeah. And I think that's where they were drawing that from. Could be wrong, but
Interesting.
someone fact check me. But I think that's where that music
Nice.
was drawing from there. But yeah, that's. Oh, and then the other thing I was gonna say, the most savage moment of the episode, going back to the spiders, was when the
Yeah.
Trandoshan leader, I think his name was Venomore,
Mm-hmm.
is like getting like whatever they call that when spiders like wind their silk around people to eat them. He's getting wound up in the spider spit silk, and then Gunji is like, I thought Gunji was gonna save him,
Yeah.
and then he watches. He's like, nah.
Nah. So I wasn't so as much as they were looking like spiders, I didn't expect them to spin some silk and then carry a Trandoshan away. That was not at all what I was expecting. So when that happened, I'm like, oh, so they're gonna eat him? Like that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, so you guys are gonna eat this thing? Okay, well,
Yeah.
I did not expect that. And I mean, even the Trandoshan yelling. I don't know if you noticed that when he was getting carried away, he was like, there was this scream. I'm like, oh, this is and then, like you said, Gundy's just like, oh, look, see you later.
Did I save him? He
Yeah,
kind of like attacked my home planet.
right.
Pass.
And they were fighting in that fire there, right? Very reminiscent of the Ahsoka Inquisitor
Oh yeah.
battle. Just the surrounded by fire thing. Fire's a big place to fight, I guess. Didn't I think obviously we have the Anakin Obi-Wan fight on Mustafar. There's just lava everywhere. There's some fighting there, and now there as well. So, but yeah, and it was just yeah, it was good. It was good seeing that. I really wonder if we're gonna see Gunji again
I
in
hope
this
so.
season especially.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good transition point to talk about the rest of this season, which this being episode 6, there's only two. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is the first half of the rest of this season, which will conclude next week, the first half, because there is both episode 7 and episode 8 premiering next week. I would be willing to bet that so for anyone that's seen the trailer for Bad Batch season 2, there is a real brief, quick image of Emperor Palpatine. I would be willing to bet one of next week's 2 episodes, probably the 8th rather than the 7th, is where we'll hopefully get a glimpse of him. Again, I don't think his role in the Bad Batch will really be that important. But one can always hope, and I think it's gonna be another one of those moments, kind of like we had this week when the lightsaber ignited, where you're like, oh, oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Which, by the way, 2 of like the most iconic sounds in Star Wars history, never really to be related with one another. The igniting of a lightsaber and a Wookiee roar, both happening at the same time. Like, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like, oh
right.
my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah, in a season where you got none of that, or a show that you barely get any of it. Yeah, you
Right,
got both of them within minutes of each other.
right. So I guess kind of to tie all of that together, I'm more at peace with where this show is, and I'm not really gonna spend every episode wondering where are we going. I think I'm just gonna take it as it is and enjoy it for what it is, because I understand that it may not be the same show that they had thought it was gonna be in season 1.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of the show, and I think it shows a lot of growth from us. We
Yeah, yeah, we're
I think
adaptable.
yeah, that's right. And where I know that there are, just people, some fans out there that are very hard set on their expectations and they want things to be a certain way. I think you and I are just like, well, this is fun, so I'm gonna have fun with it. So we would, yeah, if there is some tie-in eventually back into the original storyline with Crosshair, I mean, that's ultimately what we want. But I think we've said this earlier, is that 16 episodes is a lot. It's
Yeah.
just a lot of shows that a lot of episodes that you have to fill a lot of storyline till.
Mm.
Um, I think it's too much sometimes
Yeah.
because of it. You will have episodes that feel like filler, just kind of naturally. And even in series that have, because wasn't isn't Mandalorian only 8 episodes?
Yes.
I feel like there were even a couple of episodes throughout the couple of seasons that they've had that I'm like, we didn't really need this. So, to stretch an animated show to 16, I mean, that's just a lot of content that they got to fill.
Yeah.
But either way, it's still Star Wars. Where I think we're enjoying it. Like you said, I think maybe not resigned is the word, but adapted. We'll say we'll say we're
Right.
adapted to what to expect here with Bad Batch.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thought process of just Star Wars fans in general. Um, I I think one of the I'll say it this way. One of the worst things about the sequels is not the sequels themselves. It
Snoke.
we love Snoke. We love Snoke. One of the worst things about the sequels is not, whether you like the sequels or hate the sequels. I think the worst thing about them is the the amount that fans are just like become, I don't want to say overly invested, but become reactionary to the point where it's like that was like, and it just like almost ruins Star Wars for
Mhm.
them.
Right.
Whereas, like you were saying, you almost just, if you have a piece of Star Wars content that you're not a fan of, like think about, you know, think about what was going on from 1983 to 1999. Think about how many people during that time were like, "Man, I love Star Wars. How have the first 3 prequel episodes not come out yet?" You know what I mean? And
Right.
now we're like so lucky that we get literally multiple Star Wars shows a year. But I think we are a more, not we as in you and me, but just Star Wars fans as a whole tend to be more complaining at any other point in the history of Star Wars fandom, probably. So that's always just something I think to keep in perspective too. That we're lucky that we get multiple Star Wars shows, sometimes even like 3 or 4 shows a year. Um, so with all that in mind, I don't hate the sequels. I don't hate the sequels. They're not my cup of tea, but I can
Yeah.
appreciate the fact that they took the time to make them. And I think that's as nice as I'm going to say
That's fine.
that.
But I mean, I'll say it as much when the prequels came out. I was in that
Right,
era too,
exactly.
where when there were a lot of people, myself included, that wasn't the biggest fan of the prequels and what it brought. There were some decisions, there's some directing, that I thought was questionable. But at the end of it, maybe I was a little younger then, obviously, but now kind of seeing where all these storylines can link up, and you've mentioned all the movies and the TV shows. We're talking about books, we're talking about comic books, audiobooks. We have all of this content, and I think that's why is because there's so much. People now have everything's not going to be a home run with everyone, right? So
Right.
they're going to yell about the one book that they don't like. They're going to yell about the one movie that they didn't enjoy, because we are in the world of people, and maybe this is getting to more of a broader discussion about society, but we we like to complain about stuff, and we're babies about things. So I think that's what that's kind of where we are now.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is, like you said, there's just so much out there. We are very fortunate. We are very lucky to have all this media, all this content, and be so well connected to all other Star Wars fans, to the actors themselves. You got Twitter, you got Instagram, you have all these ways that you could see all of it. Maybe it's too much for some, but I just think that we are definitely fortunate, and I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a pretty cool era that we get to live in, where we get to experience as much Star Wars from lots of different perspectives as we get to. Well, I guess having said all that and kind of given our given our thoughts on Star Wars as a whole, more so the last few minutes, what did you think about the episode, and what letter grade would you give it?
So I'm a grade on the curve now. I mean, we're we're definitely
It's fair.
readjusting. We're readjusting how we're looking at these episodes now. Um, I mean, I'm gonna give it a solid excuse me, a solid B. Just because of obviously the introduction of Gunji, um, and seeing, hopefully that's a story that we're gonna see a little bit more of. I really did like the parts about Kashyyyk that we learned,
Yeah.
about the trees, how important they are. Because when they were like essentially like bending, and praying with the trees, I'm like, what is happening here? And you see at the end, Omega kind of got in on that too. So I thought that was a nice little bonus there to see Omega's growth, and she wants to continually learn about the universe. She was stuck on Camino for however how long, and she just wants to learn. So I'll give it a solid B. I mean, there's part of me that still's like, but where is this going? But so that's where I'll set it to a B, but a happy B.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I was honestly also gonna go with a B, kind of for similar reasons, I guess. And again, maybe we're biased because they threw a lightsaber and a Jedi in there, but it was like, I can't help myself.
It's
um,
great.
part
And
of
Wookie.
and a Wookiee. Part of the episode that we didn't really touch on yet, just relating to kind of the Jedi and just the Force more broadly in general, is what you just mentioned with Omega. Do you think she was doing that as a connecting point with Gunji, or do you think in some ways we're going to see like Force sensitivity from Omega in the rest of the season? Had to think about that one.
I did not think that, but thanks. I'm thinking it now.
Well,
that would be great. So I mean, that's one thing. Gosh, how have I not even thought of that? Yeah, I mean, the the one thing that I love Omega's character as she is now. You kind of seeing the growth in there from her. It reminds me of like Ahsoka, right? Where you kind of, and Ahsoka was a little bit brattier, I think, to
toward the
start.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning. And if I remember, like I said, I wasn't there early on when the Clone Wars was released. I was when it went to Netflix, and that's kind of when I jumped in and I was able to see it. But from what I've heard, maybe you could talk to this, was not a lot of people liked her that much,
Right.
kind of early on. But with Omega, I kind of like her pretty early. But you see obviously the growth from Omega from season to season. Obviously, with Ahsoka, she has become this phenomenon within the Star Wars universe. Now, will Omega to get to that status? I don't know about that, but to have a youngling kind of grow within the universe, I could absolutely see that with Omega. If you throw the force sensitivity part into it, oh yeah, there's she's gonna go far in the universe as well. But yeah,
Right.
that's a interesting point that you bring up. I'm still saying maybe Fee from last last episode's got something going on, um, just because I like to mix things up a little bit. But no, but I think Omega is probably a better bet if you had to choose between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the comparison to Ahsoka that you bring up is a good thing, because I think that is the reason why they won't take the force sensitive route. Because I feel like if they do, then they're like encroaching too much upon the similarities, because they're already relatively similar, in terms of like kind of the progression of growth that they have to go through, almost being, with Ahsoka's case, a Padawan, but you know, the non Jedi version of a Padawan for Omega, as she is to Hunter, essentially. Like they're going through these journeys and they're learning from someone who is more experienced than they are. Their stories parallel one another relatively closely, and so I think maybe that's the best argument against why they would not make Omega Force sensitive, is because then it just starts to become too close to Ahsoka. So But, like you said, I think it is still on the table. But we shall see. Hopefully, we get some more answers, and I really just want to see Crosshair. If we don't see Crosshair in these last 2 episodes of the first half of the season, boy.
Yeah, what a missed opportunity. I mean, we don't know that this is the case yet, but yeah, his storyline. You still got Cody kind of running around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they need to have Crosshair in this next 2 episodes for sure.
I miss my boy Crosshair. Well, we will be there to cover it all. New episodes of the Hoth Hangout podcast, of course, go live every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern on your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or you want to listen to the video version of the podcast over on YouTube. Check us out, Hoth Hangout, at Hoth Hangout on YouTube. You can also tweet at us any questions at Hoth Hangout over on Twitter, or you can always shoot us an email as well, hothhangout@gmail.com. As we previously stated at the beginning of the podcast, the Jedi Survivor game is being delayed about 6 weeks till April 28th, but still looking forward to that. Probably going to be getting some Jedi Survivor content in one way or another on the channel as well. And officially 1 month until Ahsoka. Looking forward to it all. It's going to be a fantastic blast covering it and diving into it with you, Joey. Any last thoughts? I know one thing, if you wanted to briefly touch on it, the Hasbro announcement.
Yeah, there was a big Hasbro announcement today with a bunch of the figures. I haven't watched the whole video yet, but hopefully we'll take a look and maybe break some of that down. I'm pretty excited to see what all the new figures and new collectible stuff that they have. They'll have something for Star Wars Celebration, so maybe something from there that'll be there, and I believe that's in Europe this year. So I don't know if you booked your ticket yet, but
live Hoth Hangout from Star Wars Celebration.
That's right.
Honestly, does it rotate Europe, US, Europe, US?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So hopefully next year it's
2024.
Let's go.
Well, we appreciate you so much for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. Much, much love. And for Joey and myself, may the Force be with you.